now for a different perspective on this. I want to bring in Johnny Verhoeven again to talk a little bit more about how the president himself has been talking about both the Democratic debate and these racist allegations. And let's take a look, Johnny, at the president's tweet as he heads out to Ohio this afternoon. He said of the Democratic field last night, he said he watched the stage last night. The people on stage last night were not those who will make America great again, he said, or keep America great. He said our country now is breaking records in almost every category, from the stock market to the military to unemployment. We have prosperity and success like never before. And he goes on to say, we're respected around the world. I'll keep it that way. I will never let you down. We will only grow bigger, better, and stronger together, right. Which sort of was surprising to me, because take a look at this picture. This is someone that he run against and beat in 2016, Hillary Clinton. That was her campaign slogan, Stronger Together. In fact, it's the title of her book.
There it is.
So the president there actually cribbing from Hillary, taking her slogan.
Who knows whether or not that was a little slight at his old opponent.
It might have been a slight, but is anybody buying that? I don't think the irony is lost on many minority communities in the country right now.
No, it's not. But I think you also see in the president's tweet there what his fundamental argument that he sometimes tries to make but doesn't always stay on message about, which is the economy. And I think you have Democrats who agree that, yes, the economy is doing well, but I think what you heard in that debate yesterday were the different visions for how these different Democratic candidates want to move the country. It's not necessarily about changing the approach on the economy that much for some candidates, for a candidate like Joe Biden, but it's about returning to sort of either a sense of normalcy if you're a Joe Biden, or towards that more grassroots progressive change if you're a Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, values-based proposition, a values-based argument. To continue this conversation, I want to bring in someone from Dearborn, Michigan, a community that we visited over the past couple of days when we were out in Michigan for the Detroit. Rima Ahmad Fadala is the host of the Dearborn Girls podcast. She's coming to us from New York. She lives in Dearborn and does the podcast up there. Rima, great to see you. Want to get your reaction to the political discourse right now, sort of a counterpoint to what we heard from that voter outside the Cincinnati venue by President Trump tonight. Now, how are the president's divisive, race-based attacks, his rhetoric, how's that playing in a community like yours in the heart of Michigan?
Yeah, so I think a counterpoint is right. I listened very closely to what Nancy was saying, and I think one thing that we do have in common is that we are tired of candidates who have an empty platform. We look at a platform, we almost assume that 70% of it is up for grabs, not really anything that we can expect them to deliver on. And that's something that my community specifically continues to be tired of. And you visited Dearborn yesterday, and I was watching closely, and you mentioned that people roll their eyes when you ask and kind of push about Trump's comments and ask them to give their feedback. And I think there was a slight misinterpretation of what that means. Oftentimes when people roll their eyes, you probably assume that they just don't feel like talking about it, or they don't have much to say, and that's partially true. We don't feel like talking about it sometimes because we're living it. It's something that we're hyper aware of. It's something that really does inform our day-to-day. The beauty of a community like Dearborn is that we're very insular, and so it becomes easy for us to feel this false sense of safety in that people around us look like us and understand us. But at the same time, there's a juxtaposition with our hyper-awareness of how this country views us. We're very aware. I grew up extremely aware of the fact that on a national level, Islamophobia, anti-Arab sentiment, xenophobia are things that are all at play. And when we roll our eyes, I think it's because we're so used to our voices not being at the table. We're so used to the mics never being held to us when people are discussing issues that uniquely affect our community. And so when we think about tweets like "Go back home," and I mentioned this before, I think my favorite parts about this country were built on the backs of Black people specifically and minorities, immigrants. My community is a community of immigrants. We've brought amazing things to the city of Dearborn. The city of Dearborn, don't quote me on the exact number, but I think is around 86% private sector. That wouldn't be the case without my community. When we immigrated, we really bolstered the economy. And that's just not something that's being told when we say things like, "Go back home. If you don't like it, do something about it." We are doing something about it, and that's just not really a fair narrative to say.
Yeah, the Dearborn community, we should remind everybody, is the largest Arab American community in the country, right in the heart of Michigan, critical state in our 2020 election,
Yep.
and no stranger to a lot of this divisive debate. And I'm sure many of our viewers remember back in 2012, the Terry Jones burning Korans controversy really put you guys on the map and the spotlight at that point as well, sort of caught a lot of Dearborn residents off guard at that time. Why are you coming here? Why are you making this into such a big issue? How does it make you feel when you hear the president fueling this discourse, and how do you cope as a community that seems to be getting on just fine, very successful, wonderful people when we visited there? How do you cope with a climate that is what it is right now?
I think some of what you showed in the footage, you know, our businesses are booming. We really love being around each other. We love pouring back into our people. That's how we cope. And you know, I'm not a mother. Hopefully, I plan to be a mother one day. How I cope is I want to educate my children. I want them to be better. I want them to be global citizens and see their position in the world as to love other people and support other people. I think Trump has really found his niche, and like Nancy said, has made a small group of people feel very important. And the difference, so, you know, my community has yet to feel that way. And that's why we aren't really civically engaged on a national level the way that we should be. The difference between Trump making a community like whatever community, you know, people like Nancy feel very special and important is that he does so at the expense of the livelihood and the safety of other people. Whereas other candidates that you know, we would hope would represent us wouldn't be doing so at the expense of other people. They might not be agreeable, but they're not challenging the safety and the livelihood of other communities. And I think it's very easy to forget that when you don't have to think about those things every day. And so sometimes we roll our eyes because we're tired of talking. We'd rather do.
And you shouldn't have to be forced to defend your community at every turn from something like that coming from the White House. That is no question. Rima Ahmad Fadlallah, host of the Dearborn Girls podcast in Dearborn, Michigan. Really appreciate your time and your viewpoint, Rima. Appreciate you. Hope to have you back. Thank you.